What if I told you it is really possible to build software products 10 times faster, 10 times cheaper, and 10 times with more quality? Yeah, it is really possible, and I have made a lot of research until I found a way how to build software products correctly, and also what are the common reasons that so many softwares fail or they're really hard to edit. You might be have hearing that, oh my God, we can't edit this. We need to refactor this. We need to refactor that. And our backend doesn't support this. Our app is lacking this feature and that feature. So I spent some time to realize what are the real issues here, like what causes this problem. Therefore, I'm going to invite you to this course. You're going to watch with me. First of all, I'm explaining what is the issue with these kind of softwares, like how can we build long-lasting, reliable multi-platform softwares? And then what are the common pitfalls? What are the largest mistakes people make in the beginning that would just turn everything else wrongly later on down the road? So our presentation starts with like building long-lasting software. So how can a software work for like 2 decades, like 1 decade without rewriting it? Second thing is if it's reliable, so it can work like reliably without so much of a maintenance or changes all the time. And then it should be multi-platform, so basically it works on different platforms. And then it's gonna help startups and software houses. So it doesn't matter if you have a product on your own or you have a software house and you're building products for the others. You could use the same techniques. In the end, I'm going to show and explain how I do build products for others. So how is it possible that me alone, like building multiple platforms and a software which has so many features, just in very short amount of time, all by myself? And I'm going to take you a tour into the coding I do, like components I have, things I would start with. So you might be also able to create something similar. All right, let's begin. So first of all, we need to define what is a reliable software. So if we want to say we want to build a reliable software, we need to have an understanding what a reliable software is. A reliable software is something that has few characteristics. I'd like to introduce like some of those reliable softwares. For example, keep in mind AutoCAD, keep in mind Microsoft Windows, keep in mind like these major softwares which work independently from their own vendors and you can count on them. But let's go and check in details. What are the like really things which we need to consider when we want to define a reliable software? So a reliable software, first of all, serves multiple purposes. A reliable software is not something that you build and it only works for very specific scenario, or it works for only predefined flow. A reliable software serves like different things. It could be changed. It could be used in different manners. Second thing is it can be easily modified. So this is one of the largest pains I ever seen, and so many softwares you can't edit them after a year, after 6 months. When you create them, you never can go and make changes. If you make change someplace, it's going to cascade to the other places and it's going to be always problematic. So a reliable software can be easily modified. Third thing is can be converted into different things. So imagine you have a software like AutoCAD or Revit or any kind of other softwares. They have a lot of core system and then they can edit it and make another target of people. So basically the same source code is being converted into some other software, at least part of it. And so many softwares are built without this in mind, that okay, this is going to be the only business it's going to serve and this is it. And it's a bit problematic, not because that you might want to change this into another business. Just having that mindset gonna cause a lot of bad decisions and it's gonna affect the current business as well. So because you're not building it reliably, then it's just going to affect the current flow of the software itself. The fourth thing is, which I really like, is running a software without maintenance. So many softwares are require maintenance. For example, I get tons of times backend from like our backend team software. It needs constantly their attention to it. You can't really run it easily. You need to have a lot of special software installed, or a lot of different scenarios to getting started. And then if you want to make a change, it's gonna be really, really pain, even for the programmers. And so a reliable software, again, let's say AutoCAD, is just you grab the binaries, install it, and it works. So this is a correct software which doesn't really need maintenance. Of course, it gets features, it gets a lot of add-ons, but you don't need to call the Autodesk for running the AutoCAD. So anything you build, anything I build should follow the same characteristic if we want to make it a reliable software. The fifth one is also very interesting, I would say, is that it could run without the need of its own engineers. So when you buy a car, it works without the dealership, at least to some mileage. And I believe the software can be should be well documented, could be easily started on any environment without you calling the backend people, without you calling the front-end people, without you contacting constantly the business, because just software does not able to run. Now, this is also correct internally. So if you have a software like a cloud software and it's never going to be distributed, it should be running easily with very, very minimum configuration or learning curve. And then that's going to be a reliable software. So I'm going to go and define the long-lasting software, and then we're going to have a break and have another part. Software would be in business for more than a decade without rewriting. So what is a long-lasting software meaning to me is the code you have written and the software could be running for decades, at least a decade. So it doesn't mean the business should be working or profiting. It doesn't mean that. This is not a perspective of business, rather perspective of software. So if another business wanted to create the same software, they could just easily grab this, install it, and it should be running. It shouldn't be really binding to the specific company or specific scenario. Second thing is adding modules and sections should not have touching, like the requirement to touch the other part of the software, especially database or backend. So I understand lots of businesses require to have different designs, different user flows. And all of these things, when you're adding things to it, it should not really go and change the database structure. Like what you're building, the database structure, should be correct from the beginning and before your release, because otherwise you need to convert the data later, you need to do a lot of migrations, and that's going to cascade issues in the other places of the software. What you want to do is always to have this beforehand thought through. I see a lot of products. I worked a lot of projects that like we just see for the next week or 2 weeks later, like the sprint, and then nothing else matters. And this is really, really damaging, because software is not something you can split into 2-week scenarios. You're just building and then attach these things together. It's a rather long journey. You need to consider all of it together. And if you want to build something which lasts long. Another thing is here to consider, like I remember a project I was doing, and I was creating a contact list, and we wanted to save the contact number of people. And I created in a way that it's like an array of items that could be many numbers, different types. And then like one of my colleagues said, we don't want this, please delete it, just to store the number, because we have only one phone numbers. But I was thinking in my mind, like, how is that even possible? Because people might have 2 numbers. People want to change their phone numbers. Even though if we didn't want to implement that, we had to have the database structure thought through beforehand, because it's hard to change later. And then guess what? like in 3-4 weeks later or sometime after it, we just had to refactor that code, which I was written in the beginning, and then change into single mode and then rewritten again, because we didn't want to think about 2 sprints ahead. So if you have such approach in your project, then you wouldn't have a really long-lasting software. The third item here, as long-lasting, we might be talking about in previous slides, that it should work without the business owners, okay? The software should be able to run easily without the business existing or not. So, for example, you have an Uber, your software should be easily running, and you could convert it into like Bolt, for example, or another company, without the requirement of all the infrastructure. It should have been able to be running on much smaller scale. Okay, after a quick break, we're gonna have and go into the second part of the presentation. Bear with me. Thank you so much.